This is the March 1st council workshop for the city of Bonney Lake. And yes, I cannot multitask, so I was trying to put in my my password at the time. But I believe it's time for roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mayor McCullough,
I'm here.
Deputy Mayor Carter,
Here.
Councilmember Baldwin, Councilmember Evans,
Here.
Councilmember Fullerton,
Here.
Councilmember McSimon,
Present.
Councilmember Swatman,
Present.
and Councilmember Watson.
Here. Okay, do we have any news on Councilmember Baldwin?
I believe she's at home.
Okay.
So I make a motion to excuse her.
Okay. Second. All right, Councilmember Baldwin is excused. Oh, we have to go through a vote. Okay, let's go through a vote to see whether the council approves Councilmember Baldwin's absence. Do we have ayes?
Aye.
Any nays? Okay. Okay, it's time for council open discussion. And does anybody have any? Okay, Councilmember Fullerton.
Okay, I would like to read my oath of office. I, Gwendolyn Fullerton, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington and all the local ordinances, and that I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge the duties of the office of council member according to the law and to the best of my abilities. Regarding COVID policies, orders, or mandates, guidelines, physical distancing, masking, testing, tracking, and vaccination, there is no actual law that has been passed by the state or federal legislation that requires me to comply or compels me to consent to the violation of my natural, unalienable, constitutionally protected rights. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and any law that is repugnant of the Constitution is null and void. The Constitution supersedes all other laws, and individual rights shall be liberally enforced in favor of him, the clearly intended and expressly designated beneficiary. The orders and mandates of a governor, mayor, or agent or officer for a city, county, state, health department, etc., are not laws, and public policy cannot violate the rights or liberty of the people. Now, if I was to tell somebody in this room that it is law and that they have to put on a mask because the governor mandates you to do so, then I would be overreaching. The Constitution is actually a protection of your rights from elected officials. We cannot tell you what to do. And I am also a citizen, therefore I cannot be told what to do if I do not give my consent. So that is in reply to myself and Angela Baldwin violating our oath of office. My oath of office is to uphold the Constitution, and that is exactly what I'm doing, and I'm exercising my rights as a citizen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Fullerton. Raises a question, Ms. Haggard. I do know that our governor did make a proclamation, I believe, this week. I have not been able to actually read. Would you have an update on where we stand as far as masking in indoor buildings?
Yeah, it wasn't really a new proclamation. It was an announcement that the statewide mask mandate will be lifted in most situations beginning March 11th. It'll still be enforced in particular settings like public transportation.
I see, thank you. I was, actually, I've gotten word that March 1st was, at least in King County, you didn't have to wear a mask in indoor buildings at this point. I don't know what yours have stands.
Yeah,
I think, I'm sorry.
it was a statewide mandate.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it was, that was for the vaccine passport.
I see.
Start, March 1st, no more vaccine passport, and March 11th at 11:59 PM, no more masks indoors.
Okay. All right, do we have any further discussion? Councilmember Watson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Talking about, I'll let you do that, talking about something else.
Oh, okay.
So, I've talked about this in the past. We've got kiosks in all the parks, areas, and stuff. They're old as the hills. The Litcher Mill is very old. It's important for us, I feel, to tell the citizens what we're doing about our parks, what they have available to them, especially with what's going down in Allen Park right now. I will, and this time of year is the best time for the parks crew to be able to get their clean those up, put the documentation side there, we can print them out, what we have going in our park, what's available to them. We're not telling them, I'd like to see those updated, cleaned up, and refreshed for a season. But we do want to get something going in Midtown Park. People can see what's going forward, especially Allen Park. You hear about what they're doing down there. Well, we're not telling them on the areas, the Allen Park or the other parks. Several kiosks throughout the whole city. I'd like to see those cleaned up.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Watson. Any further discussion on that one? Okay. Oh, right, Deputy Mayor Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Councilmember Evans, Councilmember Watson, and I, the first coffee with a council member, field down at Rentful's Coffee on Saturday. Hoping to use like a month and kind of have them rotate through the council members. It was 4 people that showed us to talk to us, which was small, but it was nice to be able to have a back and forth conversation. And my hope is that this planting the seeds, watering it.
Yeah, that's a point well taken.
It was, I think, a success.
We put on the record how the coffee was.
The coffee was
All right, do we have any further discussion? All right, seeing no further discussion, we can move on to the review of council minutes. Councilmember Watson?
They are good, perfect.
And I believe, I was reading everybody's names before that, but I think we covered that. Good. All right, so we have no action items. Madam Clerk, would you read item D, please?
Item D, which is ordinance D 22-33 for discussion on extending the franchise under which Comcast Cable is authorized to provide cable television service within the city of Bonney.
Do we have any discussion on the matter? I see our city administrator, Mr. Bonney.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Comcast Cable, through various name changes over the years, provided cable service within the city of Bonney Lake since 1997. The current franchise agreement expired on December 31st of 2021. With this agreement, we would renew it for another 5 years to December 31st of 2026. There are some language changes related to some recent FCC rulings. I think the most meaningful one to us is in section 3, where we're striking 8.5 of the agreement. 8.5 of the agreement, rather lengthy, it's included in your packet, provides that the cable company would provide as complimentary service to city facilities. Under this recent FCC ruling, they can no longer provide complimentary cable services, part of consideration for granting a franchise agreement. So that was something we'd have to work through in future years if and when they were to actually charge us for cable services in city facilities. Franchise agreements cannot be adopted at the first reading, if you will, and so that's why it's being presented tonight when it's first introduced. That's why it's being presented tonight as a discussion item. It's been through the committee process, and with your approval, we've moved it on the consent agenda for next Tuesday for approval.
Okay, do we have any discussion on that? Okay, Councilmember Evans.
This is a question I should ask in finance. I don't have any issue with this, but if we didn't pass it, I'm not sure what's the cause. I don't know the benefit, so I don't know what the repercussion is.
Everybody have to move to Central Lake.
It's actually kind of complicated not to. Cable franchises are regulated under the Federal Cable Act rather than state law. And they're somewhat designed to have cable providers just. So in order to not renew, you would have to go through evaluating the service you're getting, and you have to actually make a record that it doesn't comply with the provisions of the Cable Act. And then you have to publicly announce that, and then go through a process for not renewing the franchise.
What does the franchise do or provide, I guess, to the people?
Well, it gives the city a 5% franchise fee, which is a good thing. Then under federal law, we're entitled to collect that. It also gives the city an opportunity to, if there are any service gaps, I'm not sure there are in Bonney Lake, but in some areas developing, you could ask the provider to build out their system over a certain number of years to make sure full service. There are a variety of things you can do with them. In our situation, my experience has been it's been a fairly agreement because we haven't had a lot of real specific issues to deal with.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Swan.
So is that the maximum franchise fee? Is that set by state law or something?
It's federal law, it's 5%.
5%. And since, I don't know, were we actually taking advantage of them, where the offer, part of the franchise agreement was to provide complimentary service to the public buildings? And Chuck saying no or yes?
Yes, I mean, there are several TVs in the police department that are connected to cable. On this building, we have 2 or 3 of the break rooms that I think have
Well, yeah, and I was thinking internet.
internet.
Is that's a different?
No, it's broadcast TV only, and it cannot be rebroadcast to the public. So any complimentary service we use has to be privately used.
Well, I can say that the Honorable Mayor office and it does receive a golf channel.
The only one.
As long as we keep that, everything's cool. All right, well, are we, do we have to have a vote to put it on?
No, we put it on next week's consent agenda. Being head nod.
Okay, so, let's move to item, E. Madam Clerk, could you read that, please?
It's item E, which is for discussion only on the Allen York Park boat launch.
And I believe Chief Jeter has some comments on it.
Yes, I have a fancy PowerPoint for you there.
Oh,
Are you going to start it, Sadie, or I need?
You need.
Oh, we have to. Got our gratuitous MSU shot right there.
Sorry, can't do it.
All right, take 2. All right, we wanted to have a discussion this evening to talk about the boat trailers parking situation at Allen York Park. Fantastic that we're getting a new ball field out there, but I think you all know that that's where we used to park all the boat trailers. So now we have 0 designated spots for boat trailer parking. So Public Services and Police Department met and we talked about possible solutions and alternatives. There aren't a lot, so I just wanted to kind of go over those with you. The one that staff would recommend that is going to be the least popular would be to close the boat launch for 2022. There's several pros to that. As you can see, the launching of the watercraft, I think everybody knows how Allen York is set up. When you're launching a boat, the trucks and trailers have to swerve in and they come out onto West Taps. If we're doing that, it has potential of interfering with construction traffic coming to and from, which could be a concern, maybe not, but it's something definitely that we wanted you to think about. We would not have the boat trailer parking issues that we've had in the past where they're parking in the wrong spots. It would allow our marine services folks to focus on the water. We do a lot of our work at the boat ramps, doing inspections before people actually get onto the water, make sure they have safety equipment and talk to them about the rules of boating and that sort of thing. It would definitely reduce traffic issues on Bonney Lake Boulevard and West Taps. As I said, you wouldn't have the trucks and trailers coming on to West Taps and backing in and out of there. And potentially it would reduce the number of watercraft on the lake. I know that probably most of you have been out there and seen the amount of boat traffic on a hot day. And this has the potential of reducing that just because you wouldn't be launching, 100 plus boats out there on a given day. The cons obviously are it's not going to be a popular move. A lot of people in the city and outside the city rely on that boat launch to launch their watercraft, because I think everybody knows the other public launch is Pierce County, and they do have a hard cap and they're able to close and say no more launches. We don't have that ability even with our current situation. Having that boat trailer lot, we can accommodate over 100, easily over 100 vehicles and trailers out there. And we are effectively eliminating that, and then we would have to take another lot. We did a quick computation on the loss of revenue, which isn't massive, but from the launches that we had last year, there were 1,150 launches that people actually paid for. We sold 140 permits to city residents, so it equates to about $26,000 in loss of revenue. Again, the biggest con is it removes a relied upon option for voters to launch their watercraft. There is a couple opportunities that we talked about. Church Lake Private Park on Church Lake Drive on the other side, kind of kitty corner from Allen York boat launch. They don't have a ton of spots, but maybe they would be willing to talk about allowing city residents to purchase permits and launch from there. That could be an opportunity. The kayak rental could be moved. I think everybody knows it's kind of tucked into the south corner of Allen York Park. And this would open up the boat launch area and that dock for the kayak rental to be a little more active in that area and be a little more conducive for his launching. So this is from June to September, the number of launches that were captured. It's 1,105. If you divide that by the total number of days between June and September, it's only 9 a day. But 140 city launch passes that were sold in 21 are not counted in these numbers because those are the only ones that paid. That also doesn't count the people that don't pay. Believe it or not, that happens. So, but if you look at the times there, you can see the peak times are kind of 10 a.m. till about 6 o'clock, and then it goes down after that. Just to try to give you an idea of volume and times when people are parking. This is a Google Earth shot from July of 2019. This is the current Moriarty lot. There's about 40 trucks and trailers in there, and you can see there's plenty of room for more to park there. So we are effectively eliminating this area from any sort of parking, boat trailer and or vehicle parking. So we're losing a good chunk of our parking space. An option on the table, not a favored one. I want to make sure that you know that, but we wanted to look at options for the council to consider, is allowing a limited number of vehicles parking at Ball Field 4. So basically changing that from a regular parking lot to a vehicle trailer parking lot. So it would allow some watercraft trailer parking. We figured 23, 30. So in that current spot, so it would amount a limited number of launches a day. It would reduce the traffic queue up time if you're only launching 30 a day. So there are some pros to that. And kind of show you what we're looking at here is here's the current boat trailer parking lot where we can put 100 plus at the Moriarty property. This is Ball Field 4 parking lot that we would change into boat trailer parking. It says max, but it's been upgraded to 30. When I did this, we didn't have the final data in. Ball Field 4 parking lot for people that are actually using Ball Field 4 would be moved to in front of City Hall. So that, I'll get into the cons in a minute, but that's just kind of what we're thinking is one of the options was kind of push everything out that way.
So would that only be trailer parking in Ball Field 4?
Yes, correct. And then the Ball Field 4 parking lot itself would be moved to kind of the roundabout or circular drive in front of the old City Hall. Yes, Mr.
Right where it says current boat trailer parking, just above that, that's where the old utilities building is, right next to the tennis courts, right there.
Right
Yeah.
here.
Could that be used for parking? Because that's like part of the utilities, correct? And that'll be moving?
So in that picture that we have right there, that green space in between where, basically right above where you were describing, right above the, right in
To the
this
right,
area?
yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
No, the ground, right there where the arrow is.
Right here?
Yeah, because there's a little, right by the tennis courts, there is a
There-
driveway.
Yeah, there's, Public Works staff actually accesses that all the time. Facilities down there, so we would not want to allow any sort of public parking. And there really isn't that much room. When you actually go down there, it's a pretty tight area. And when these folks have to swing the dump trucks in, it just,
Oh, okay.
we wouldn't be able to incorporate that in there. And then just since we were talking about it briefly, just keep in mind too, that this is a sensitive area. And so there won't be any parking.
That's water,
Wetland.
wetlands. Yeah. Thank you for clarification.
Okay, so then we move on to the cons, which are a little bit more. It would require restriping of that lot. Signage needs to be added, and again, I'll need to update this, but 23 vehicles, trailers would be the maximum. And as I said, in 2021 alone, we sold 140 boat launch passes just to city residents. It would also push parking out into surrounding neighborhoods, creating a lot of the nuisance issues that we usually see, but not with boats or with trailers and vehicles, but with just regular parking. And since we're losing this parking lot for regular Allen York traffic, it's got to go somewhere. So it would push it out into the neighborhoods. Yes,
Would we have to widen the lot entry?
we'd have to look at that. That's one of the things with the ingress and egress. We have those ecology blocks there, and with the swings on the trailers, you wouldn't have one coming in and one coming out at the same time. The current configuration would not allow for that.
Okay.
So we've used, that's where boats are parked before,
Yes,
because we've used the,
I think we've used it both, right?
but previously for boat trailer parking.
Yeah, and I'll keep going here, because there's, one thing I want to talk about is the management of that lot, because that's a big deal, because that's where we ran into a problem before when we used that, is we had people that were blocking other trailers in, and they were double parking, and it's a nightmare. But, again, it reduces parking for Allen York Park events. I know that you can probably open it up if you have a concert in the park, and we shut down the launch anyhow. Other things like that, but just, on a normal weekend, people using the ball field would now lose that, we'd lose that entire lot and the Moriarty lot.
Chief, on that note, I was specifically thinking after and the kids, the program that they have on Mondays. Are you saying that boat launch is actually closed when those events?
It is for the tunes and taps. Is it for the kids event too on Mondays? I'm not sure about that.
No, I don't think so. No, we tend to keep it.
I know it is for the tunes and taps, and we haven't had Bonney Lake days in a couple of years now, but do we close the launch for that?
No, I don't think so. No, we've kept it open traditionally.
And so we would lose that for that weekend as well.
The beer one, the food and beer truck, do we close it for that? Kind of the replacement of Bonney Lake days.
Historically, what we've done is any of those weekday evening events, we've closed the boat launch just because of the conflict there. That particular event, though, I don't recall.
That's all the event.
Yeah, I think it's on the weekends. Yeah.
The all-day weekend type ones, we tend to keep boat launch open.
It would be difficult to manage and enforce the regulating the parking in there. We would have to have somebody at the boat launch and at boat trailer parking lot from probably 10 a.m. till at least 6 to keep, so we can communicate, say, hey, there's no more spot at the boat launch parking or the trailer parking, shut down the boat launch. And then you run into the question, where are we going to queue up people that are waiting to launch? You know, when you pull the velvet rope and one leaves, where are they going to queue up waiting for a spot? And it's going to be right there on Bonney Lake Boulevard or into the neighborhoods or into the senior center, and that sort of thing. And again, if we're launching, could potentially interfere with construction, traffic.
But you wouldn't have to do a velvet coach there. okay, you're in, you're done. There's a bunch
But
of-
people come and go during the day,
Yeah,
so
no,
yeah,
I'm
if
saying
we do that,
Yeah, you can say, well,
yeah, and that's for the day, is what you're saying. So if you get there at 10 o'clock and we get 30 in there, then we don't allow anybody else, even when people leave, is that?
yeah, but
Yeah.
again, all the scenarios,
Yeah, and then who gets preference? Do city
Right.
folks with the passes, are they the 30 that are allowed to park there? And if they don't have the pass, that's questions for you all. I'm just,
Yeah, well, got more of this.
oh yeah. I have some more cons here. Yeah, increased traffic congestion and frustration for those waiting. Ingress, egress, as I talked about it, we'd have to do something to the configuration of that lot due to the turning radius trailers, the ball field floor parking in front of the old city hall, which then I think pushes everything into the senior center, who already I know has issues on hot days of people parking there anyhow. And again, moving the boat trailer parking out into adjacent neighborhoods where they may just try to park on the shoulder, trying to avoid that. So this kind of gives you the idea of what the configuration would be if it was turned. We would definitely have to fix the ingress, egress here, but we'd also have to have a way to shut it down. And right now we do that. We have an ecology block on each side of the entrance and then a cable, so we're able to shut it down. But it would, again, have to be staffed while we do that. And then this kind of shows the configuration on how it could be configured.
Why would you have to shut it down?
Sorry,
Why would you have to shut it down?
when it's full,
When it's full.
when it reaches capacity.
So I'm not completely following that, right? When it's full, it's full.
Right.
You have to shut it.
Yeah, because if you don't, people are gonna park, double park, they're gonna park on the sides, they're gonna try to park anywhere they can, even if it's, all the parking spots are full.
Oh, well,
Well, and also they're gonna launch their boat first,
Right.
and then they're gonna come drive around trying to find parking space, only to find the parking lot is already full.
there you go. There's a good answer.
Now, I'm out.
George is saying,
Solve the problem. I was assuming that the monitoring, you're talking about, was it taken that we're gonna hire during the summertime?
usually it's a public works. I've been doing it at the Moriarty. You certainly, I wouldn't advocate for paying a police. Certainly we would have our marine services folks available, but I know, talking with Ryan, that people can get a little bit testy. And so it's having a seasonal down there, we need to be careful about that too. And you can't have the wrong person there. But there definitely has to be communication to avoid that launching and then going and finding you don't have a place to park.
Why can't we have the same security people that took care of the dating area, keep the crowd under control? They did a good job. Now we got two there.
Pierce County Security, they don't need to, is that what you're
No,
saying?
they have two there. Why couldn't they also have one more person do that for us too?
That is something that we could entertain, but you would have to have somebody at the launch and somebody at the lot. Plus, we have the two on the beach, one at the entrance and one at the far entrance to keep people from going, sneaking in, is the idea of that. So yeah, it's possible. Again, it's something to consider, is it's going to cost money.
And I do have some reservations with this scenario and staffing it with public works employees, because in the past, when we've been able to utilize the Moriarty property, we've known we've had plenty of capacity to get people in. So even though sometimes you get a cranky individual, we were still able to let people in. Under this scenario, there will be people who have to be put away. And that's going to escalate things considerably. I don't know if anybody's ever looked up boat ramp fights on YouTube, but you can get to see some really, it can get really stressful. People
Take care of it.
People get pretty crazy. So just something to consider when you look at staffing, there's that issue. And then, just like it would be, but, whether we're using seasonal or we're using regular staff. We're going to talk about maintenance.
Give me stats on that.
I don't have the stats, but we usually get probably at least one a year, and it's usually involved with the. So that's usually how we find it, but they do out there, they're actively looking for people that are voting on it.
Okay.
So, and this is for 22. In 23, May be able to accommodate, actually get rid of the ball field and ball field floor. And this number may be wrong too, correct me, 20 more vehicles back there on ball field 4.
I don't know that excuse me. I don't know that we actually calculated a number there. We do have a rough cost of probably about $200,000 in order to convert it to parking. I would suspect you could probably get more than 20 in there, but again, you have an access issue because you have that one gated road between the two roads. It's really just a maintenance access there. So there are some other issues to consider from an operations standpoint. But certainly that is an idea if we're willing to commit the funds to do it.
And we have just recently funds to AstroTurf and Ball Field 4.
I'm referring to the new field.
Oh, the new field.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, that makes
So
sense.
this is kind of the
Parking. Is that ball field?
That's actually a good question. I don't have numbers for how often that's used. It is a rentable field. And so I know that the leagues at times have taken advantage of it. I don't have numbers for you.
This would kind of show you the footprint of that, and you can drill down on the details to see that what would be required to turn that into a gravel parking lot for additional. So that's not something that Public Works could get done for this voting season.
Yeah.
So this would be for 2023, not for 2022, not an option for this year to get that done. But that just to give you an idea that, yeah, this isn't a 2022 problem. This is a forever problem. Yes, Councilmember Pope.
Can they park in the grass? Is there a way to actually access that field with your truck pulling a?
It's pretty soft. And if we happen to have some rain, I think we're asking people to park on it as it is right now. We definitely want to upgrade it so that it's suitable for vehicles.
Very small opening there.
Yeah.
And the grass drainage swale that would affect it. How would you?
Well, certainly if we do this, all that gravel is considered an impervious surface. So we have to handle the stormwater as well. So there would be installation of stormwater infrastructure to take care of.
And this is kind of the estimate doing that, just get under 200,000. And this may not include everything, but again, this would be for 23 to turn Ball Field 4 into additional boat trailer parking. That,
Nice. We're all positive.
Other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's great that we have the ball field, but one of the unintended consequences is now we've got significantly less parking for people to enjoy the park and launch their boats and all that. So definitely something we have to consider. I will tell you that over the last 3 years, the improvements we've made with park security and limiting the number of people there and doing the voluntary bag checks, just the thought of getting your bags checked and having the security staff call us when they see contraband and having our folks roll through has really changed the tenor of the park. And again, we're heading towards that family-friendly park that we want to have. And it's really reduced the time our officers spend there. But on a hot day, even now with the Moriarty lot, we'll have, if we've got 5 officers working, every one of them is down at the park directing traffic and avoiding the boat launch fights and trying to just make sure that we'll have a peaceful end to the evening. And honestly, it's a 3-month problem. It's from June to September, and it's not an everyday problem. It's a hot day problem, which again, you lower that down to what, about 20, 25 days a year?
Yeah.
But those 25 days a year, if things go sideways, it can be horrible. When I first got here in 2018, that summer was, we took guns off people. We had, I don't know how many melees involving gang members. And unfortunately, it wasn't the people from our city that want to use this park, it's people from elsewhere. And our city residents don't get to enjoy the park. And I think we've made great strides in getting that back to our citizens and making it a family-friendly venue again because of the changes we've made. And with this boat trailer issue, again, it's going to cause concerns on, again, what are we going to do with the people and where's everybody going to park? And it's going to force things out into the surrounding neighborhood. So that's something we really need to consider when we make this decision, because we're taking away, how many spots did that ball field for just for vehicle parking? You know how many it held?
It was close to 80.
So now you're taking 80 spots away from people that just want to use Allen York Park, plus the Moriarty property, and we're building a ball field, which means it's probably going to get more use, and there's no parking associated with that. And so you'll have the ball fields being used on the weekends, and it's a hot weekend, so where are the Allen York Park people? It's really going to cause definitely a strain on resources.
Not boat parking, but there is parking associated with the field, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So we talked for years about limiting the boats going out there, just like they do at the Hemi Park. So why can't you just say, we'll take 30 boats? When those are out, we're done. So the park lot's full.
That is, you can do that, but again, it's gonna have to be managed, and we don't have like the park can just shut a gate when they know they've reached their capacity. We'd have to have it staffed. It's not impossible, but we can do it. But again, we're selling permits to city residents. We sold 140. If they all want to use the boat launch on a day, only 30 of them are going to get to use it. So we need to be transparent about that as well, and let our city residents know that you may have bought a launch pass, but you may not be able to use it on one of the nicer days because only the lucky first 30 get to launch. And that's definitely a possibility, and totally up to you folks. But again, there's going to be consequences with that, because anytime you go from allowing everybody and anybody to launch, because we've had the luxury of having the parking, to now having to limit it, there's going to be pushback. And again, it's a city park, and we sell the launches to city residents. So my guess is that the city residents would expect some sort of priority.
Yes.
Yeah, is there any, do they sell them to the non-city residents, or they have to kind of pay them?
No, you have to be a city resident, and it's a seasonal boat pass, so you buy it, and I can't remember what it is. Sadie, do you remember? $20, $30, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's unlimited launches.
You know what the county, allocation is for how many boats do they allow in their spot, the county launch?
I don't
No idea.
I don't know that.
I don't know that.
How many parking stalls are at the county?
Hey, Chuck, how many? No, it's really super important, because if the county is only allowing, 70 boats, we should never be allocating. Then the council, and I've told many council members before, the folks who live on the lake are very sensitive to their lake, right? They pay an enormous amount of funds in property tax, and they need access to their lake, and they do not like Bonney Lake just allowing anybody and everybody to launch boats all day long. And that's been a long-standing thing with the lake folks, because there's a limited capacity out on the lake. The more boats you put out there on the lake, the more problems you have. So they're not in, like I said, if Pierce County's only allowing 70 boats to be falls, then that should be absolutely, I would think, we should never launch more than 70. But I tried to look it up and I couldn't find it right there on the internet.
Yeah, Google map it, count the spaces.
Oh, I gotta have a count though or something.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yes.
I'm in agreement with the idea. I know with just the setbacks we've had with public works, building anything we can causes of delays is going to be beneficial in the long run. We will save that $26,000 by not having our contractors say, well, 4th of July weekend, we couldn't even get in there. But my only question is, and this will direct to John, do we need approval from the Cascade Water Alliance to do that?
That was one thing I'm not certain of, and I don't know if Kathleen remembers. I thought boat launch, and maybe Dan, the boat launch, I thought was some sort of grant funding.
Yeah, it is. So it was state funded at one point in time, but what's the context of the question?
What's
Can
our,
we shut it down?
Oh, I would imagine you can shut it down. The issue always becomes how we charge city versus non-city access. It has to be equal access, I think, to everyone. Is that correct? So if you basically can close it for all, but you can't, I think you definitely rile people if you closed it for non-city residents.
Right, yeah.
just to weigh in on that a little bit, two things. One is give or take about 80 spots up at the park, Pierce County Park. So for food for thought there. The other thing is I reviewed at least the copy that I have of the agreement that the city has with Cascade Water Lines Beach Bank 13. And it lays down a lot of rules as far as access to the beach part, but there is no real guidance specifically on operability of the boat launch.
Right, yeah.
So it does tend to be signed.
Because it's our boat. City boat. I just did a count as well. I came up with about 150. Because there's another gravel lot over there. So it's quite a few. Would be no. Now, if you go back towards the entrance, when you first come into the park.
Oh.
Over off to the
And
left.
and they did a lot of work over on that end, right, too, for Pierce County, because they usually be able to go there and park outside of the park, right? You know, and then walk in and everything like that, you know, and they like mixed that whole thing. How they managed that without the gate and
No
everything.
parking here. There's a lot of benefits to being able to have a gate.
Yeah,
It goes off and say, okay, we're done.
Exactly.
I don't know how this applies to the city resident versus other resident thing, but could we talk to, I think you had mentioned, talk to homeowners association park and see if, hey, our city residents could at least have access this year for that if we were to shut down our park. You're just throwing that out there, or is that something maybe that somebody's talked about already?
Nobody has talked about it. They don't have a ton of space over there either, but typically when their residents launch, they launch and then they take their trailers back to their residence. But on the weekends, I know they probably have family members come and launch and park their boats there. And I couldn't tell you, Ryan, do you have any idea how many that area would hold? Because they have a trailer parking area, they have a grass area too, which I know, again, is kind of a picnic area on the hot weekends. But it was just something that we threw out there as a possibility. I don't even know if they would go for it. My guess is probably not, because then you would have to give them some sort of access card or access key to get in that could be handed down.
over there. They control it.
Yeah.
Well, that was my question. The mechanics of the pond are close it off, but people have to get out of the lake too. I mean, once you close it off, you don't want them stuck out there on the lake. So
Yeah, we would have to.
we have out there.
We would have to staff it until we closed it at night, until everybody's out of the lot. Either that or we just open it up at a certain time and not care. That would be something, yeah, we would have to have somebody there when it's closed, the chain goes up, we would have to have somebody at the launch to tell people you can't launch, and then when people come off and they need to go, then they have to let them out. And yeah, it would be, we would have to have people there from open to close, make sure that people can get in and out.
Well, and supply body on somebody. Can't go on.
Right.
To see the dirty problems. Okay, do we have any further discussion? Oh, Councilmember Evans.
I know you came to us because you wanted to discuss it, but it wasn't just a discussion, you're probably looking for direction too, I'm guessing.
That would be very nice.
As much as it would hinder everything, I would agree with you, setting it down for this year would probably be the pragmatic thing to do, just for ease of construction. All the other variables that are going to come with that, and stopping fighting and all of that stuff, as much as it would not be the optimal idea, it is, I think, the best one for this temporary situation. It begs the question, though, what are we going to do next year? Once the construction's done, that won't be the issue, but parking will always be an issue.
Yeah, the boat trailer parking is going to be our number one moving forward.
Yeah. So, yeah, just setting it down this year doesn't resolve anything for next year, but it is something we probably need to consider pretty heavily upcoming months. So that would be my suggestion or my recommendation.
And if we're leaning towards that, I believe it would be prudent for all of us, or to get it out to the public that this is a closed extension for 2022. So that
I think we've already sold one boat launch permit, so people are, I think, trying to hedge their bets.
That's the golden ticket. That's the market.
And Ryan, can you remind, what do we typically launch?
Memorial Day.
Memorial Day?
This year, they have brought the lake up to recreation.
Yeah.
Way early. Thanks,
Barely?
I thought the
What's
rains
that?
might have
Barely?
Yeah.
Early.
Early.
Yeah, well, they're pushing their thing again, right? They're doing their thing where, oh, this is our property, meaning the lake people aren't aware that they do this whole pool thing at 572 or something. It's height of the lake, and there's this argument about where your property ends and where the lake starts. And they take the pool up and they like, raise it way up so it comes into everybody's yards, and they're like, this is ours, just want to remind you, you know. Anyway.
I have a thought, though. I agree with Evans, but there's gonna be an ongoing issue we're gonna have in years to come. So if we give it a try to do like 30 boats, there's a park there, work that out, at least they'll get used. There's a limited amount of boats that can go out in the boat launch there. The residents that take their back to their house, which what you do, they can just launch it anyway, but once a boat's launched, park is full, we're done parking boat trailers. They can't park on the side street. I mean, it's not entirely, gonna have a real heartache for people who are paying their taxes for a park in a boat launch and they want to use it and stuff. To say they can't use it all, it's gonna be a lot of problems for all of them.
The problem with that is that, yeah, you can close it, but people are gonna continue to launch park where they, or you can say you can't park there, but we don't want people.
What do you do next year then?
Yeah, well, that's why you brought up, ball field 4. You know, I mean, that's, I think. And we do have the space coming online, which you guys didn't mention. Public Works area. That's the latter part of April.
Am I hearing you want us to tear down the building?
No, there was some, you know, where
So currently in front of the existing public works, there is some parking out front.
Well, in fact.
In back where public works and senior center.
Where equipment is now.
Oh, yes, in the future, that's true. There needs to be some work in order to set it up to facilitate that, but certainly.
The new public works center is coming on, we'll be moving in May 1. All that equipment will have new homes. That's what they just told us. So we were in CDC, I was just passing that along. So that all that equipment moves out of there and it's not a lot. I think I agree with Councilman Watson. We need to target and try to say, okay, we're going to try to allocate for 50 votes. How do you mechanize that? Can you mechanize that? Do you go out for a lottery kind of thing where it's kind of like, please apply for your vote pass this way? 50 passes, and that's what we're going to do. If you 50 passes that are allocated parking, if you want a non-parking pass, you know you want to go over there and you want to launch, and you're responsible for finding parking for your trailer and your boat. What's the big deal with that, right? If they go park somewhere, wherever they have to park, that's their thing. Probably passed out over here. Park in my neighborhood, you know, and then somebody's, you know, they have to be legally parked, right? It's public area, and if they can find a legal parking spot, find a legal parking spot. Sure. 2 miles away, and it's a legal parking spot, public parking spot. You know?
Just a manpower.
It's a hard process, it's a hard process, right? I mean, people want to use the lake and, you know, the boats are there and want to be there, you know, this is.
Because we did limited it, I thought we actually limited it. There was a concept at one point in time where we tried to kind of limit it. That's where, you know, we weren't using the Moriarty piece for a very long period of time. That was it's relatively new in my mind, place to use park. So once we did that, it sounds like, I thought we were, you know, saying, oh, you could only, really hard to mechanize that kind of a thing and figure that out, so. Probably where we got into a little bit.
Councilmember Swan, I mean, I know you'll remember, we used to have a bollard system, you know,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
It's still there.
Well, we had some problems with that, we failed to put it on a trailer, not we, but the bollard, you know, it's not on the trailer. But, you know, there is a way to mechanize. That's past, but presumably you could program that so that it would only go down 30 times, and no matter how many times you swipe your card, it wouldn't go down.
That's the toughest thing because
That's full.
Right.
those 30 are launched by 9 a.m. and come 1 p.m. all the boats are out.
And you've already maneuvered the truck and trailer around, you backed up, and you're fixing the card,
Yeah.
and not knowing why.
But 1 o'clock, the parking lot's empty and we've already swiped our 30 by 9 a.m.
And they're all
Now-
county residents.
Yeah.
And the people that have bought city passes aren't able to launch.
Right.
You know, like I said, 140 last year alone, just in the city. So that's something you have to consider too. If we limit the amount of parking, boat trailer parking, do we do away with the parking pass and everybody pays the same and there's no benefit for the city residents? Something that we need to consider, because it has been a benefit in the past. Obviously, you pay X amount, you can launch the entire season, where if you don't live in the city, it's per launch $20-some or that I think. So that's something too, that there'll be backlash again. If somebody buys a boating pass, that comes with the expectation that they can use it anytime, any day. So we would have to be very clear on that too, that this doesn't guarantee you the ability to launch your boat unless you want to take your trailer back.
Well, I would, given the discussion that we had and all the questions that we April questions, and it would be before the public works center's open.
Little bit of issue with that, just because I think something needs to be done as soon as possible, because if we're gonna continue to sell permits to
Right.
do this, and then we make a decision later on to not sell them, or only sell a certain number, what have you, I think we need to give people most opportunity to make the best decision for themselves. And I think we need to do something.
Okay, we should put it on, I mean, tonight being a workshop, I didn't think this was an action.
No.
It's not, but we can give direction.
Yeah.
The action takes place at
Because there's only a couple of days a year, really, right? Because it comes down to the numbers. There's a couple of days a year where the numbers.
It's more than a couple. It's probably 20 to 25. Yeah, you're not talking a lot, but on those days, it's unmanageable.
Unmanageable now.
Yeah.
Not gonna fix the unmanageable. Fair to, do our best with the limited resources we have, or close it, right? And closing it isn't gonna, yeah, I'm not sure closing it is really going to, solve anything immediately, because I'm not sure there's gonna be a lot of people that feel like closed until they find it's closed. And then, pretty sure there'll be some bad behaviors. I have a hard time with closing it because of that. You're gonna get a bunch of people who are, and I'm not too sure that that's not gonna cause a behavior. Yeah, you know, but I think the thing is, what I don't want to do is I don't want to burden. That's what I'm trying to.
Hold on.
Leave it open. I really don't want to burden our police officers with this. I have to keep it open and,
Contract security, so.
contract security, yeah, but I think we need to decide whether we're gonna keep it open or not, because continue to sell permits if we're gonna close it. So how do we come up on that? How do we make that decision? Yeah, like that, like,
Councilmember Wilson, you have a comment?
Yeah, well, Councilman Swatman, in the past, before they were using the Moriarty property, how were they handling that? Were they parking in the ballpark for parking?
Yeah, well, that was one place called the floor, and everywhere else in the neighborhoods and the hall and in back of City Hall.
It's busier now than we were before.
Yeah, that's really weird, right? Because we almost kind of created our own probably, so by having parking available, I suspect a little bit.
Just to continue to paint the picture too, just keep in mind that they're on the corner where the landing at Lake Taps is at. In another year, that's going to be much more built out, and so you're going to have more traffic with residents who are coming to their homes right there on the corner of Bonney Boulevard and West Ave. So just another facet to this to consider.
The other thing too that impacts is the growth outside of Bonney Lake in recent years. They're all coming to use our boat launch, to use our park. So that has changed the dynamic. You know, when I started 34 years ago, it wasn't that big of an issue to use Ball Field 4 for the 40 boats that we had or 30 boats. And now when you have over 100 and all these people coming wanting to use it, it's, you're right, we kind of created our own problem by having that Moriarty lot. But again, with more people growing in the area, the park space not growing and the boat trailer area not growing, it's definitely at a pinch point.
Oh, Councilmember,
And 20, 30 years ago, it was Ford F-150s pulling a 16-foot Bayliner, and now it's F-350 quad cab 8-foots pulling a 35-foot speedboat. So that's changed as well. But if I recall last year, Ryan, you had a really difficult time securing seasonal labor.
That's correct. Yeah, that's been a struggle last few
We
years.
had positions unfilled, so taking anything public works right now, I think would be very hurtful in the long run. And I know we're talking about two issues here, long term, short term. I mean, we've really got to consider when this construction goes on, got to be staging for all this heavy equipment that may or may not have to move across the street to that boat launch at some point, just while they're doing the site prep. So
Are you talking about the ball field that we're building today?
yeah,
Because that's all over there. There's no, it's already, they're in there, though. They're not having to move equipment.
so, but I mean, having all that additional traffic in there wouldn't impact anything on
Well,
this?
they're all just on that site.
Yeah, I certainly haven't seen the contractor sequencing plans, but it is a fairly large area for them to complete the work. They do have the potential to just kind of rotate around the site while they're doing different aspects of the work. We do also have some room over on the city property area where we could maybe entertain a small amount of contractor staging.
But I mean, short term, having all of that parking gone, I mean, as much as I hate to do it, most practical thing this time with future discussions of long-term resolution, which I know is what she's probably looking to get some direction on tonight, is that short term.
You know, what strikes me, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So what strikes me is a public-private partnership, right? I'm thinking that, except for the, what do they call it, the Renaissance Fair?
Yeah.
Right, that there's a big parking lot out there by Kelly Farm that maybe we can try to work a public-private for this year out, and maybe have some sort of a shuttle between the two, right, somehow, and,
That fair takes place all of August.
yeah, so that would probably be a non-starter, and that, but other times, maybe that's a reasonable thing that, and, maybe it's an opportunity for them to make some money off of that, and gets us kind of out of the vine. I'm not sure if they would be receptive to that or not. That's definitely, it's not so far away that it's untenable for people, but it definitely has room for large trucks and trailers.
That'd certainly be where from a city point of just liability in transporting people.
Mhm.
We have senior buses and we do that regularly, but a bus schedule or something going.
The other problem with that, it's a good idea. The other problem with that is our docks are only so long. Only put a couple of them there, and then when you're running back and forth, there's I think it creates an opportunity. Just something awful. I think at this point, and it's almost like this isn't a good. That's not really all long record. I think at this point, I don't want to close it either, but I think it probably is the best thing to do. Might take off some people, but I think, for this deal for 1 year, and hopefully we can come up with something where we in there with their vote and county park or one of the other private parks or something. I don't know if you can that's around a number or something, but I think it would be prudent to just for a year.
Yeah, but see, the problem with that I'm thinking about is that if again, there's X number of days, worst case, if we're saying 20 days a year where there's this problem, you're closing it 100% of the time for the 20 days. Because there are people that actually go out there and do a lot of different things. Yes. A lot of fish, there's a lot of things that you're talking about closing it all the time.
I'm not for, I have a really hard time, because I think, before Moriarty parking came along, there was always gonna be that problem. And, I don't think that we need to even close the, parking, once the parking lot's full, there's gonna be, 3, 4, 5 people that leave, and I think that when those people leave, we should allow for more people to come in. And, I mean, you have restaurants that make reservations. We could easily come up with a telephone thing. So, take your boat down to the city and go get some lunch, and we'll page you on your cell phone when your parking spot's ready. You're next in line, make a reservation system if we have to do that, something like that. And people could even call in and make a reservation the night before for parking, and the first 30 people are going to have the first 30 places to park. And then, once those people leave, then we can start paging the next on the list. You're on the wait list, you're on the wait list, you're on the wait list. Don't come until we page you, And I don't think that would be a very complicated system to be able to set up even, but I just have a really hard time saying, okay, no fun for anybody at all, hey, we're gonna have this great ball field that we put in for you, but now you can't go out on the lake. So I just have a really hard time with that.
Well, it's a point well taken.
Yeah.
In that, that is a 21st century solution that we have not.
It's just like it was before. We just had so much parking, anyway, for Moriarty parking. When that parking lot's full, we're gonna let people look on out there. We can have security service to watch it for us. One by the launch area, one over there. If we got 2 more spaces open, we let 2 more go in there, and it is first come, first served.
And we have to take into consideration that we're talking about untenability as opposed to people understand that there's going to be out there, and there might be a little bit more, but doing a little bit more research into the untenability of probably very prudent. There's ways to think outside the box.
I believe we pay $60,000 a year roughly budgeted for security. Right. I believe that's one person at the gate at the park.
That's 2 people. I think it's around 70 or 74,000.
Okay, so we'd be looking to double that as well. So we're $26,000 in revenue, spending $76,000 in offsetting costs to have a person with a radio at the parking lot and another one at the boat launch.
And the other thing is too, we still need to answer the question, if we do allow limited parking, who gets it? Do city residents? Do we continue to sell the permits? We have to answer that question too. Or is it just everybody pays the same? So that's another thing that we need to address as well, even if we do allow a limited amount of people. And one of the things with having the development road is the queue up space. I know it sounds good to have them go, to enjoy something to eat, but they're going to go into a neighborhood and they're going to park in front of some house waiting for that page that may never come. So it's just, every action has a reaction. So we have to think about that too, and the impacts, because I know that probably Sadie's office and our office, those 25 to 30 days a year when it's really hot, those neighbors are on the phone complaining about the people that are parking in their neighborhoods now, dumping their trash, urinating in their lawn, and then you've got the problems with the boat launch and everything else. So it's just, again, it's we have to think this one through. And again, every action is gonna have a reaction, so we have to think about what's gonna happen long-term. Yes, we need to have a plan for this year, but definitely moving forward for 23. Certainly, I wouldn't be an advocate of keeping this boat launch closed. I mean, it's one of the only ones in the area. There's that and the county park, and that's it. On Lake Tapps, the only two public launches. So certainly you don't want to do that, but there has to be some sort of cap. And I know Deputy Mayor Carter has talked about this before. That park is not designed for us to control. We don't have one point of ingress, egress where we can say, sorry, the park's full. We've got all the neighborhoods that they can park around, and I know county has that problem too. When their lot's full, they spill onto, I can't even remember the road, North Taps or whatever that road is there, and they've kind of taken steps to address that as well.
Either way. But we clearly have the ability to limit the number of launches.
Correct. Yeah. It's just, how do you do that? And again, do the city residents get a perk for their park, or are they the same as we have?
Just the first question is, do you want to limit the number? Right? Do you want to say, okay, we're only going to allow 50? Like the first 50, and that's it.
How do you limit the number of launches? You let 50 on, you 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, but how do you stop them from launching after that?
That would be somebody there.
You would either, you either have to install some sort of physical barricade, or can we have to have somebody there? Yeah.
I don't know if they should.
Well, I mean, are they manually functionable where you can turnkey them on or off?
I don't believe so. That system hasn't been in operation, hasn't even been here, so I don't even know if it works anymore either way. Manual or yeah. One of the things to consider as we've been about this is that certainly you're going to get like, no matter what you choose here, and the users of the boat launch are made up of both our residents who definitely want to serve them outside. My neighbor across the street down in Sumner comes up here and puts his boat in there. But 100% of the people who call in to complain about somebody parked in front of their house are residents. And I think that's something to consider here, because those are the people that, more so than my neighbor down in Sumner and some of the users of the boat launch coming from other jurisdictions, those are the people who are paying more into this system to make sure that, their front yards aren't getting urinated on and so on and so forth.
Right, we're doing two things there, right?
Yeah.
So they're either legally parked or they're not legally parked. We have a lot of that, we have some nasty neighbors. You can't park there, and they're like, they call the cops, and the cops are like, hey, it's a public street, they can park there, okay? So, that's the way that is. Obviously, the chief references all the illegal activities, you can go along with that, you have to keep track of them. So let's not mix the two issues together, right? Because the public has to be responsible enough to know that, that's a public road, and if there's a way to legally park there, they can park there. Right?
I think the thing that I'm looking at for my staff, and I'm sure the chief knows, that I'm not sure I quite follow allowing something that is going to be pulling us off of all the other stuff that we're doing. And certainly.
But what is that? Well, I'm not following.
Well, I mean, I can't speak to how he staffs his department, but I know for myself, I mean, whether you're going to hire security to work this or not, we're just bringing all this forward to talk about. But certainly from a public works perspective, the seasonal thing is an issue. If we don't have seasonals, then we're going to be staffing this with regular full-time employees and paying them overtime, because this will go into the evening. It creates an issue here where we're robbing from one to be able to do something else here. And I'm just asking that we consider long-term whether this is something that this is the direction we really want to go.
As I recall, when we talked about the park and doing the field and all, there was a discussion about the area you had said that critical area that maybe could be transformed or something, trade-offs or something like that. Is that a possibility for the future?
Hey, I don't know. I'd have to go back first and see what the official delineation of that sensitive area is. So then we know how much land we're truly dealing with. The original, I don't even want to call it a design, that the artist's rendition of what the improvements at Allen Park will look like showed that parking lot being added in there. And we know that it won't work in that perspective, or in that type of parking lot, and the design and the dimensions that they put there aren't going to work there. But I do think, as Dan identified, the real issue here is, there isn't capacity. And so that project did identify areas up around the public center, future parking. Perhaps that's a portion of the project that you want to move forward sooner.
Certainly worth discussion.
So there are options here, but it would definitely take some time to.
Madam Clerk, do you know whether we have any data on how many complaints were actually filed on that? Did we keep anything like that?
Many.
Too many? I mean, would it be, is it fair to say 500 to 1,000, or would it be?
But you know, there's a difference between a complaint and a valid issue, right?
Yeah.
Because again, that's that transparency piece to the public, because like I said, a lot of the neighbors don't understand that, oh, by the way, it is perfect because you go to park there. And they just don't understand that. There's a definite way not to park there, because they park in the driveway, there's all kinds of details about that, but,
And Chief, would you have any data on?
I could check. I don't know how we would, because if they come into us, they're not really tracked. If they come into South Sound 911, they might send them out as a call, but typically they just get routed to our records clerks that would handle it, unless if an officer actually responds, we'd have a way to track that. But if they're just calling to complain, similar to the clerk's office, we wouldn't have any statistics on that. I wouldn't say it's anywhere near 500. I would say probably over the season, probably 100, maybe. I know that we get a lot. And again, we're talking about 25 to 30 days a year, but those 25 to 30 days a year, sometimes I have my entire police force down there for 6 hours, and that's all they can do is manage that park, so that no other part of the city being policed, unless there's a priority somewhere, and then we break somebody loose, or we have to call people in. So, and again, just trying to find a way to mitigate that, like Ryan said, his people, we would be pulling them off of something. And again, we spend a lot of resources on those 25 to 30 days a year, and we're trying to avoid that and trying to mitigate it. That's why I'm in favor of the closure. I know it's not the popular option, but it would certainly help us on the issue of who gets a boat pass, the city residents or not. It would help us on, okay, am I the first 30 in? Do we allow 30? And then as they come and go, allow more people to come and go. Because again, if we do that, we're going to have to manage the queue up spot, which is a traffic thing. And it's just, there's, again, the action and reaction.
Well, and at this point, I believe we can have talked this issue down. And I believe it's time to move on. We're not going to solve the problem. So, is there any further discussion, and then we can move on?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Evans has a question.
A couple, for the long-term solution, if some of the buildings were gone at the Public Works Center, is there access to ball field for that way, if there were to be a new ingress?
There is. Right now, it's more of a footpath, so there'd have to be some improvements. Are you talking about a vehicular connection between the two?
Yeah, so instead of having to go through the parking there.
Yeah.
Because just meandering through there, but if there was a straight in and out, future.
It's another area too where I know wetlands have been delineated. I have to take a look at that. I'm not saying it's not a possibility. We would just have to look into it further.
And with the 30 in or out, we're talking probably 80 spaces of cars that are being turned away at that point. So, I mean, there's a lot of people that can't go to the park at that point then, because that is a pretty significant amount of parking we're turning away for 30 cars. So just another consideration. Like you said, every action has a reaction. That's another one to consider.
Councilmember McClellan?
Yes, I have two questions. Can private security handle the traffic queuing? That's something that is only reserved for enforcement?
Well, typically, I don't know what their training and experience is, but they certainly would have no authority. Like, we would have the authority to issue a ticket or do something if people aren't obeying us. I know they don't have that authority. Ryan and I were kind of chatting about that too. We're not even certain that they would want to do the boat launch monitoring and boat trailer park, but
Well, that was my next question, is like, can we contact the security and find out if they have the personnel and if they would be willing to do that?
we had a tough time getting it staffed consistently last year at Allen York with 2 people. More often than not, it was 1. So, yeah, those are questions that we would have to ask, is can we find somebody to do that? 'Cause I don't think we can rely on the seasonals to do it.
No, I don't think so. Well, I don't have, with the way that we're looking at how other communities are paying their seasonals, we're gonna have a tough time just getting.
We had, security staffing there, were they there 7 days a week?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, from Memorial Day until Labor Day, and then obviously if it's raining, we call them off. Sometimes if the weather turns, we send them home early, but they are scheduled to be there 7 days a week from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. from Memorial Day to Labor Day.
I would just throw out there too, some of that dealing with the queue that he's talking about, I've seen on those hot days, it can go all the way back to Dearborn. So it can get really long. It's not just doing the parks, it's doing streets and roads all leading to, so I just throw that out there. Well, when you get in line to launch your boat, it sometimes backs up, back.
Should that be through Bonney Lake and then go down?
Probably Boulevard, Locust, and then Russians Memorial Drive, they've been huge.
I've never seen it that way. My house, I drive it.
I don't know when that was.
Well, since 2013.
There was a long line there.
What about, the park and ride, like, because when we have certain events, don't we shuttle people over from the park and ride? Or we have a shuttle?
What events?
Like Bonney Lake Days or something, do they have any time where they've ever shuttled anybody? Because I know like the fairgrounds does that, you know, like you can parking ride, and then.
That would be my
So that's
question.
county, okay. Clarification, that's.
Well, okay, how about we move on to, item F?
I was just saying, out there after you guys decisions.
Well,
Otherwise, we're just talking talk.
Well, I believe that's probably what has happened over the last half hour. I don't think we're going to get a vote on it tonight. We'll be putting it on. Yeah.
What direction are we, I mean, are we asking for data back or what we?
Well, and that would be up to council.
Or should we take a consensus on who's wanting to close the launch versus who's wanting to keep it open, or? I don't know.
All right, you're right.
I'm on full.
Yeah, so I don't think I don't think people want to close it.
Right.
So if we do a Velvet Road type aspect, it sounds like Pierce County Security would be called, see if they have something they would like to do if they have. And then I think the other question is, are we going to install those cars for the city residents? They need to know pretty soon if they can buy them or not.
You might want to suspend that for this year, though. Then you could pay there, but then I don't know if that paid there.
Yeah, I know.
You know, it's the detail stuff, right? Right, staff, it's expert trying to point out all the, they know.
I do think there's more questions that need to be answered before we actually.
One more thing too, is to throw another monkey wrench into it. Looking at the launch stats, there are quite a few fishermen that launch. We have quite a few launches between 5 a.m. and 9 a.m. So if the Velvet Road is closed, they're not going to be able to launch. So do we need to start staffing it at 5 a.m.? Or do we just leave it open until 10 a.m. and anybody that gets there, gets there? So there are a fair amount of fishermen that do use that. Yeah, chances are they're off the lake by 10 o'clock. They don't want to deal with the lake borders.
Right.
But
Chief, please tell those fishermen. Don't tell the fishermen. Call the fish.
Bottom fish.
No, just
Here's something you guys want to take.
It will be, yeah.
More of this or?
we could ask around other cities or something that has lakes.
Most other cities
Probably
are
not
like
as
Pierce
big
County
as-
where they have
yeah.
one ingress and egress and they can limit them out to period. There's
Right.
no other situation that I'm aware of like ours.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to, item F.
Can we maybe get some clarification?
Yeah.
Are we going back to public
I
safety?
believe he's
Are
probably
we
going
public safety?
or
The intent of a chief
intent of gathering, I'm not the one to speak to this because that would be up to the committee. But, we probably do need more data on the complaints or discuss or refine what the remedy would be in order to present that before we actually take a vote.
This is gonna be you directing staff on what data to.
I was actually planning on doing that,
Okay, yeah.
or looking into it myself, but yes.
I mean, okay,
Next Wednesday?
Tuesday, yeah.
Okay, so we'll have to look into some of the data that I was questioning, and I
Okay.
appreciate it. Okay, Councilmember Watson.
Can't do a discussion here, Chief and Brian, as a team, come up with two ideas. From listening to what you have talked about, here's the two most logical things you think we could do. Which way do you want to go to council? Done. So it's closing it, that might mean it's going to be open. We can walk, there's a lot of things we can do. I think we can discuss this till it works here all month long. I think they need to look at what we've talked about. And from their point of view, what makes the most sense, and bring us a couple options back. Let's decide those.
How much money are we willing to spend on this? That's my question. Right, we're gonna spend money on this, and how much money is it? Is it gonna be $100,000? Is it $200,000? Are we gonna take $1 million out of reserve? Right, what are we gonna do? Right, that's really what's gonna come down to from the council side, is are we gonna spend money on it? Or are we gonna change some ordinance? I don't know, in my mind, I'm willing to spend some money on this for the citizens of Bonney Lake. Part thing. And if the citizens of Pierce County and people in Tahali and that other place over there, Lakeland Hills, right, benefit, then okay. I'm really concerned about the citizens of Bonney Lake, so if we spend money, I want to make sure that money serves those people the best way. I'm not sure, right now, I think we're stuck, leaving it open, and stuck with the easy answer is hire security to help us manage the access to the parking lot of ball field. That seems to me like we're back in the corner for that for this year. Then we got to really think about what we're going to do 23, and we're going to make that decision too, like right away. That's going to take time and money.
And so the two questions would come down to, Councilmember Watson, whether we, or whether you as council would vote to, close it, or we are looking at, putting preferential treatment to our citizens.
One quick comment, I want to say something about it. How many years ago, I used to drive to Auburn that way all the time. They put no parking signs on the street, the main road, and the side road. So there was a sheriff there all the time, just giving out tickets all day long. And so if we put signs up around the area, you come from the high school, you live there, you're from there, whatever, you can't park there, otherwise you get a ticket. You know, and that would be something that we could enforce to keep them off the side streets a little bit that way too. And just use the parking lot we have available, and that's it, the best we can manage it that way. If they can't find a place to park there, there's no place else close by, unless they go park the parking right, and have their friends bring them back to Lake that way. You know, because when they drop the boat off, one person stays the boat and they drive up the lake, but the other person comes back. So,
I'm selling a season pass in front of mine.
me too.
Get your all back.
Yes. Okay, so our direction and solution would be to put this on the Public Safety Committee agenda, and we're looking at questions whether to close the boat launch for the season or to allow our selling spots for our citizens. Is that a consensus?
I have one question more. bringing up Councilmember Evans, what he brought up about access to ballpark 4. If that, would that be possible to that walkway that you were talking about to connect to ballpark 4? Is it literally like against the law or environmental problem if we were to park on a grass field ballpark 4 like this year? And could we have that walking path just be paved? Could we have an answer for being able to park in that area on Tuesday?
If you're gonna leave the field the way it is and you wanna park on the grass and open it up, certainly that I think you might be inviting a little bit of trouble with, some vehicles when they go back there and park there without there being a project to improve the area. So that's one. The other issue with the connection between Field 4 and the Public Works Center, that's where the connection was that we were talking about. That's a whole other issue that really, I don't think you really want to consider using that until you improve the Public Works Center side to have more parking to make it worth the effort. So a couple different issues there, but certainly if you want to let them park on the grass, you can allow it there. We might have to do a couple things to allow vehicles to get in and out, but I think it's going to be more of a headache than
Build a dirt ramp or something, or a gravel ramp so they can get.
But it's more like when you're on the turf itself, and I think that could be a problem when you start taking trucks in and out of there and trailers in and out of there.
You got trees there, so
Yeah.
Well, maybe we could look into it and figure out if there's something that could be done by this summer, because you guys are gonna be out of there in May.
Yeah. We are, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we are. Here's where we'll be at.
Might be parking cars or
This,
both, but
sure,
if
yeah.
we can make it happen.
Just to be clear, what we propose to make it to parking investment, so I just throwing that out there. If that's something the council would most like to do.
All right, are we ready to move on?
Yes.
Yes,
Sorry.
okay. Item F, Madam Clerk, could you read that?
Item F, which is AB 2234, for discussion on the American Rescue Plan Act funding.
Okay, and prior to us beginning with this, there is one item on the, having to do with the ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act funding, that I wish to table tonight, that having to do with the strategic and vision planning. We're just table it to put it on further discussion on our committee. Other than that, I believe we're ready to move on. Ms. Ryerson, you ready to present?
Actually, I was going to go through the list, Mr. Mayor. So,
Okay.
Just for a quick refresher, I think everybody recalls the American Rescue Act. American Rescue Act funding we received in 2021 was just over $5.9 million. We received our first half installment of those funds. The second will be coming, I believe, sometime this year. Funds must be expended by December 31st of 2026, and if they're project specific, they have to be started no later than December 1st, the 31st of 2024. If you recall, last October, the council did allocate a small portion of the funding, $122,000 for COVID cleaning, purchase some additional laptops, and then fund the HR general's position full-time through the end of 2022. That being said, we have all of the funds left. The administration, the mayor, myself, and Sherry have worked with department heads and come up with a proposed list. As the mayor just said, we are tabling the executive department proposal for the strategic planning effort with Jensen Isham. You'll see what we presented before was upgrading the technology in this room. We came up with a number of $250,000 because that's what the city of Sumner recently did. They televised their meetings live, and so we proposed that for this room. As an alternate to that, Chuck Human has looked into it a bit more, and for about $33,000, we can get a company to come in, do some additional. Chuck can jump in if I misspeak, but some additional microphone jacks, some new microphones, a couple cameras, and then I think a server that will allow us better integration with the new Zoom and BlueJeans.
Just a little point of clarification, it's not adding any microphones. It's basically a very bare bones upgrade that will allow these microphones to integrate with BlueJeans and Zoom, and then using two and tilt Zoom cameras to replace the owls. So that would be the higher, about 35,000 with tax. But it's using as much existing hardware that we have, upgrading what we barely need to be able to integrate with BlueJeans or Zoom or any conferencing. But that's not 250,000. That's not replacing everything in the room. That's just getting us up to be able to use microphones and get this quality audio out on the internet.
Yeah, I don't know whether we're gonna discuss items as we go along.
That's what I was, Mr. Bodish,
Certainly.
Well, any discussion on this?
No, yeah, and I appreciate Chuck's looking into that. Of course, for me, I don't know why nobody can ever hear me. It was just me, myself. I always had a problem with it. I'm not like some other councilors. Because, again, the audio for the owls, we're not really integrated here. So Chuck's doing a lot of checking and trying to figure out how to fix that, right? Because even though you can hear my voice very good over the speakers here, the owls and the remote users, it picks them up a little bit. Talking about it, being able to hook those together. I think that's very important, and you may have seen in your email the recent, I don't know if that Senate bill's still moving, but they're doing a bunch of stuff in public meetings, and they're gonna require the public to be able to do, virtual appearances and stuff like that, so. it's gonna be a problem. I would be very much in favor of doing whatever we had to do to let people hear me remotely.
And regardless of whether or not we use ARPA, I believe it is an important upgrade.
Yeah.
And,
I don't know, applicable for that, right?
right, but I mean, I would guess that we move forward with that portion.
Okay, and so, as a direction on how we're moving this, what calendar will we put this on actually?
I think the sooner the better. I don't know if Chuck could get it ready for the meeting on the 8th. Possible council meeting. Now run forward and council concurs with that.
Does council concur? Councilmember Watson.
So is that, it's gonna hold 250 or?
No, this is just 35,000.
Yeah, because I am concerned about the 250.
Okay.
We'll move forward with the contract for the 5,000.
Thank you, Mr. Bodish. Do we have any more?
Yes, we do. Police department, sorry. And again, this is not an all or nothing proposal. Items forward for discussions. Quite a bit of time talking about how long it's hard. And certainly we're not looking for decisions on all these tonight. We have some time, but we want to get these out in front of you. Police department, in 2018, we did not fully fund vehicle replacement, and so we're kind of behind the 8 ball, so to speak, with replacing police vehicles. And so we proposed using $300,000 of the funds to replace 5 police vehicles, an additional $12,000 to retrofit 4 existing vehicles with ballistic channels. And then, as we experienced with the Sumner Grade fire, we found out we had issues with the emergency generator at the public safety building, so we had put that in at $225,000 to replace that generator over at the public safety building. The prosecutor's office, with a backlog of cases related to COVID, we're proposing a limited duration legal specialist 1 through November of 2024 to help with that backlog of cases that we see coming. A couple different software programs, LexisNexis and LawBase, and then evidence refrigerator. Again, there's some issues, storage of evidence and the amount of storage capability we have over at the PD to actually store evidence that needs to be refrigerated. And then finally, the big one that I think most of you are all interested in are the public infrastructure improvements. The remaining pages in the packet are the list of water, sewer, and storm projects that are identified in our CIP. As you can imagine, even though $6 million sounds like quite a big number, we could use all that up with one water or sewer project. So we really took a step back, looked at our CIP and came up with 3 projects that we felt we could spread across both water, sewer, and storm. I do know that the conversation the other night related to the utility rate study. I think Councilmember Swatman was suggesting that maybe we hold off on identifying the use of any ARPA funds for public infrastructure projects until we have a better idea of where we're going with utility rates. Projects we come up with, filling our radio read water meters. That's been an ongoing project, I think, 10 years now, if I'm not mistaken. And so we suggested allocating $2 million to finalize that project and make our system entirely a radio read water system. Summer wastewater treatment plant. I know certainly the members of the Community Development Committee are fully aware of this. We had a presentation here a couple months ago from Public Works staff down in Sumner. There's a number of facility upgrades, including the cake dryer, I guess, if you will, because it's all down there. A big industrial dryer that dries the solid waste materials at the plant. And so we suggested $1.63 million for upgrades down at the wastewater treatment facility, and then the stormwater decant facility for $1 million. Councilmember Fulcher, that's the area that you were looking at parking earlier, where there's kind of the dome-shaped facility back there behind the skate park. That needs to be moved. And so if you recall, we carved off, I think it was about 3.5 acres of the Compass Point property with the kind of finger access off to 96th Street in anticipation that that would be the new stormwater decant facility, certainly be in closer proximity to the new public works. We suggested allocating $1 million to that. So again, these were the list of projects that we had come forward that we thought would be appropriate to be used for ARPA funding. Again, it's not an all or nothing list. We can support with the minimal audio and visual improvements, upcoming council meetings. But again, we just wanted to get this out before you and give you an opportunity to look at it and open it up for discussion.
Okay, let's go over Deputy Mayor Clark.
Thank you for putting all this together and getting us. Here's I want to make sure I understand this right. The radio read deal would get us to the point where then we can actually help people see and bill on a monthly basis. They can actually see what their water rate is.
So that $2 million, what that would be doing is not only replacing the rest of the meters in our system, we would also then begin looking at what it would take and then getting the infrastructure supporting a fixed base radio system. There is software that comes as part of that potentially as well. That would be a customer facing portal for customers to be able to see their use in real time. You need the radio read backbone to do that first. So we would focus first on that. And then with the fixed base radio system, which means basically, simply put, all meter reading would be done from utility billing up in finance. We would not necessarily, unless we have to double check reads, we wouldn't necessarily use meter readers to drive around town for a week or two every other month, each month. So the fixed base radio system may require the installation around town, so there would be cost involved there as well. So we're actually looking at more than just replacing the radio reads that are remaining, but it's also expanding that system to include those other items.
And by doing this, or along with the improvements to the Sumner wastewater treatment facility, does any of this could any of this lower a water or sewer rate for citizens?
So that's a little bit more complicated. Obviously, there's a lot of projects I think that are already factored into the rate increases they're currently dealing with. I can't speak exactly to how much this could potentially impact rates. I think that's something that Carrie's got her hand up there. She might be.
So yeah, I think I understood. It's hard to hear. If you can't hear me, I apologize. So the 3 projects on the public infrastructure improvements that are being proposed would not reduce the rates because they've never been budgeted. They're not currently in the CIP. Correct, Ryan?
That's correct.
Yeah. So these are not going to reduce your water rates. However, if you don't approve them with ARPA money and they're required to be done, the only one that's not going to be required is the radio read water meters / fully automated. That's the only one that's not required. The wastewater treatment plant is going to have to be improved, and it's my understanding that the storm water decant facility will also have to be addressed. So both of those projects have not been put into your rates currently. So when FCS comes out, those projects will need to be added. So it's kind of like a net zero here. If you pay for those with ARPA money, somebody else is funding them. If you don't, then they're going to have to be built into your rate. Does that make sense?
And Ms. Russ, just to clarify that point, does that mean that would help keep the rates from being increased for our residents?
Yes, using ARPA money would make it so that the rates wouldn't increase.
Good. Okay, Councilmember Evans.
Thank you. Thanks for putting all this together. A lot of it is, I mean, I don't think anyone would deny that it's stuff that is good, useful, and probably stuff that we need. But I'm having a hard time with some of it because the spirit of the intent of the American Rescue Fund Act is to respond to COVID-19 emergency and bring back jobs. It's to address economic fallout and lay the foundation for strong and equitable recovery, replace lost public sector revenues, which we didn't have any, support vital public services and help retain jobs and really lose too much that we haven't been able to recover. Support immediate economic stabilization for households and businesses, address systemic public health and economic challenges that have contributed to the unequal impact on the pandemic on certain populations. And it goes on in here to keep talking more about support for households, small businesses, impacted industries, essential workers, communities hardest hit by the crisis. It does talk about investing in building, maintaining, or upgrading their water, sewer, and broadband. I think that was just some lobbyists that got that in there. But to me, the spirit of the intent is to help the people of our community. This is money that is funded by our kids and grandkids and great-grandkids based on the fact that we're so far in debt in this country. That while it may not be the direct citizens' money, it is our citizens' money. And I'm a little disappointed. I don't see anything in here about small businesses, our senior center, food bank. We have a presentation 2 weeks from now on the food bank. Actual impact for the American recovery. There's a lot of stuff in here, and there's no doubt a lot of it needs to be done. I just don't know how it can be shoehorned into the verbiage that's here and still meet the spirit of the intent of what the federal government gave us this money for. I have a question, Ryan, on the stormwater decant facility. We contract out our stormwater cleaning, is that correct?
There, catch basin cleaning we do, but the decant facility is used to accept all that waste and then dewater it and properly treat it before it can go into the sewer system.
So the companies we contract out to don't provide that as a service?
No, they come and take all that waste. Thank you, this guy. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All that waste ends up from those contracts getting taken to our decant facility.
Okay, there's not a county decant facility they can take to?
I suppose with some sort of interlocal agreement and some kind of monetary contribution, that may be the case. However, that also requires additional travel time. It's not necessarily just right here in the city. And actually, now that I think about it, I have to look into this a little bit further, but as an MPDES holder, we may have a requirement to have our own. So, you have to check on that.
I was just going to say, I certainly appreciate Councilmember Evans, reminding us what the funds are to be used for. I can assure you that the final rule that was issued is quite lengthy. And I see Ms. Ryerson, was able to, she can hear us.
How can she?
Not on video. Yeah, right now. But she has reviewed all of these in light of the final rule that was.
Yeah.
Believes that all of these
Absolutely, but
And certainly, as all of you recall, we did use CARES Act funding, for small businesses. We did use CARES Act funding for the food bank. With the small business loans, I remember, I mean, we had trouble giving away the money.
Yeah.
Wesley Harris did a great job of reaching out to small businesses, sometimes 2 and 3 times, trying to cajole people to apply for the funding. I don't remember offhand the amount we actually distributed, but we did not give away all the funds. We had initially allocated through CARES.
Yeah.
Not this.
But, and I know Sherry's a talker, I know everything will fit in that box of, it's just, is that, just because it fits, is that the intent of what the government was trying to do with this?
Well, I can make a comment to that, Councilmember Evans, is that last week I had a mayor's meeting a Zoom meeting, with our representative, Schreier. And that was one of the items that we did indeed discuss was the intent of the ARPA money. At least from her perspective, the items that Mr. Bakich did read out had to do with both public safety and with our public works infrastructure. And according to her, it is appropriate money that fits squarely.
Like I said, yeah.
I mean, that's all I can say. I don't know if that would be the entire House of Representatives' opinion on our little bit here in the United States.
It's one government agency talking to another government agency. We went out to the people and said, hey guys, we've got $5.7 million. That is the equivalent of $271 per person in our city, or $518 per utility user. How would you think we would best spend this money?
Right.
Doing a radio read that would allow 6 people to benefit? Getting some software that would allow 3 people to benefit? Like I said, it's not that this stuff isn't needed. It's the spirit of the intent. I don't see how this helps how some of this stuff helps our citizens in the frame of this. While it may fit the actual legislative word, I think this is us taking advantage of free money that we should be using more appropriately for the communities. I mean, Lions Club for Kids could probably use some things, and the backbones of our community should be benefiting from this. Not so we don't have to have a guy ride around in a Jeep twice a week. I mean, it is important as that is. That's where I'm at with this money is, I don't think we did a good enough job representing what the citizens need in this. And yeah, some of the public works stuff won't lower the rate. It'll stop it from increasing. But for $518 per utility user, what is the best way to, I mean, I would rather give them a $518 credit. And that is a true impact to that family. $271 per person is a true impact to that family, So just my 2 thoughts.
And that is point well taken. Councilmember Holden.
I was just thinking, along the lines of what Councilmember Evans was saying, was more specifically, like giving back to the community with the money, like, helping out the senior center, helping out the food bank, making sure that all things that Councilmember Evans already spoke of. But yeah, like more giving back to the community rather than, adding things that we're just kind of putting things in here, and everything has to do with the stormwater utility. And a lot of these things that are here are not going to lower the water rates. They're not going to really help the community any, other than the fact that if we pay for them with this money, then it will stop the water from being raised anymore. But I get the heart what Councilmember Evans is saying. Try to come up with some other community projects that this could be for as well.
Oh, absolutely. It's point well taken. I do have a question, Mr. Johnstone, if I could ask. In my memory, I believe I was at that meeting when the radio reading was actually discussed, and what, wasn't one of the items that was discussed is that that would facilitate bills being bi-monthly to a monthly,
For actually, we're looking at getting that off the ground prior to what this project would be furnishing.
Okay. All right, thank you. Do we have any further, Councilmember Watson?
Well, I appreciate all the hard work. I can see what you're doing. I have great ideas. But as Mr. Motivation and I talked earlier today, concern was not trying to use, I think giving something back to the citizens is important for us. We have projects already planned out. Why can't that money offset the cost of those projects to help reduce our water bills right now? Showing them we're working towards that, more money back in their pockets, at least for a short term. And then we go on, work on funding the rest of these projects that are necessary. I look down there, one like Cedar View water main, that's not essential. It's been that way forever. They're all in sewer there. Eventually, you have people that want to build out there and change it to having more sewer lines in there. This is not helping the people of Bonney Lake. It's helping us for future needs to help them over the sewers. So, a lot of things there I have concerns about that we're using money for.
Well, and again, I just want to point out, Cedar View is not, that's just under the list of potential projects.
Okay.
So, we're not proposing, for instance, the water main project. $2 million for the radio reading meters, 1.6 to the treatment plant, 1 million decant facility. So what follows after that in your council packet is just a list of potential projects as examples of things we felt would be eligible to use.
Thank you.
Ms. Ryerson, did you have a comment?
I have a couple comments. I'm finally back. Sorry.
Welcome back.
Thanks. The computer got too hot, I think. The comment about lost revenue, I did run the calculator that's provided by the GFOA for the American Recovery Act. And according to their calculator, we are considered to have lost $8 million in the general fund. So we can use this money to work on other projects that would support the general fund, in that they account for what we had received the year prior to COVID, the year during COVID, and the lost revenue amounts to about $8 million. And we're not even receiving that. So that is eligible use. As for, I don't know which part of this you've heard versus not, because like I said, my computer was kind of on the fritz here. The projects, if you approve the stormwater and the wastewater treatment plant, that will keep your utility rates from going up. So that does benefit the citizens. The last thing I wanted to comment in is if you're talking about giving money back to the citizens, I know it is not an authorized use of ARPA money to reduce a tax for the citizens with this money. So I would have to really look into that if that's considered a reduction of a rate. I know there's a lot of utility programs out there. We have gotten our customers, so I believe this last time we had, and Ryan, you may know better than me, but I believe we only had 18 shutoffs. So we are back on track with our customers. And as John mentioned, we didn't have a lot of customers actually. We were really trying to get that money out there and making accommodations to try to get that money out there during the CARES money. So those are my thoughts.
Well, thank you, Ms. Ryerson. Councilmember McClemens, were you raising any? Okay. Oh, and Councilmember Evans.
With sales tax being extraordinarily high, property values going up, home sales through the roof, where are we losing this $8 million at?
It's part of the revenue calculator. So a lot of it's going to be, you lost a lot of money with your, I'm going to switch over to my computer here. Hold on. You lost a lot on the recreation. We lost a lot on police fines. They weren't out writing tickets.
And the other.
And then they also give you an inflation amount. So they take what you would have earned in 2019, where you ended up in 2020 and they add an inflationary amount to that. So
clearly, legally, you can spend the money on a variety of issues. Right. Whether you lost, whether you lost agrees with that or not is one point. Because, I would hopefully, and we've identified a lot of those one-time things you want to do, right? To focus on spending the money on one-time items. Throw it as a program, then you're going to have another issue behind that, right? You're going to end up trying to figure out where to park all those extra posts. Because, like a car or whatever, that's a one-time kind of expenditure. I don't know why we fully fund the R&R. I thought our R&R was been fully funded.
Person didn't want to.
Back in 18 or Chief, how long do the police vehicles actually?
I know we have some
What's a shelf?
cars out there, right?
8 to 10 years on our vehicles. What happened, it was in the transition between Don and John and Dana and me. There were a certain amount of cars that were scheduled to be replaced in 18. And then when John and I took our jobs, we realized that the funding was not there. So we missed a year of replacing vehicles. So I don't know if the money was or was not there. That'd be a question for Sherry maybe. But I know that there was no authorized expenditure for vehicles. So in essence, it put us a year behind replacing.
Makes sense.
Well, hopefully, my wish is just that we can carve out some money from the ARPA funds to at least buy Ms. Ryerson a computer.
And,
the computer is fine. I think it's just overworked.
So I very much agree that, the public works back funding, stormwater and the wastewater treatment, carefully about, bang for buck kind of thing. Because as pointed out, the radio reading meters goes in that direction, but it's incredibly technical and there's a lot of things going on there. Those are one-time funds that, keep the rates down, so that might be a good investment, but, it's just a discussion at this stage, I think. Because there are a lot of things, and, Councilmember Evans pointed out that there was an identified in the bill there with high-speed internet infrastructure or something like that, right? Some of the cities that went out there, I think Pierce County, I don't know if they spent, these monies was one of the recovery monies where they allocated $14 million for rural internet access or something like that, right? You can do a lot of different things with the monies, and I don't know what, that's what I was trying to get out of Councilmember Evans is what's the result you want, because you could do something, strangely enough, Chuck's here to probably perk up, but, you have the east town out there, it's a large industrial area, and I can guarantee you, if you put a business out there right now and you want high-speed internet, you might have a provider that you can get to that's going to cost you an extraordinary amount of money, right? But if you want a fiber optic, dual redundant circuit or something like that, it's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you are not going to get that out there, right? So you see what I'm saying? You want to attract a high-end business that's probably going to have a lot of employees, it's going to have a lot of technology, and it's going to be able to go there. That's an example of where I'm not saying we should at all, but I'm just saying that the money's available to do those kind of things with, right? You have to look out there and figure out, the Cedarview thing that Watson was pointing out there, Councilmember Watson. How are you ever going to get there? There's needs in that area to have that area sewered. How are you ever going to get there? They'll send money, you send money. Wastewater treatment plants each down there. That's a gigantic argument in my mind about, how much that we should fund and Sumner should fund kind of thing, right? They just recently came out and said, oh, by the way, we had $77 million laying around the sewer fund to play with our golf course down there that they don't have. Like, really? And you guys want us to spend money upgrading your sewer plant? Anyway, so lots of discussion, I think, right?
And, Mr. Stockbridge, we were presenting, the ARP funding, at this meeting, simply as a direction, right? As far as discussing itemization, would that be a proper,
It's an agenda bill.
It is an agenda.
And the agenda bills for discussion.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so again, yeah, you're correct, Mr. Mayor, I mean, it's just, inform the council of a suggested list of projects, as Councilmember Swatman and others have discussed. I mean, there's any number of direction or ways we can go. I guess the one takeaway I am hearing is that we'll move forward, regardless of ARPA funding, with the, technology improvements that, Chuck McKeon has identified, and we'll get that on hopefully next week.
Get through that, because some of the smaller ones, as suggested,
a lot of
we
the
get to a point where, it's like, because I don't know the details again of, we still have officers, and that's 300,000 miles on it, and the chief's like, man, that thing's falling apart, should have given you the money for it a long time ago. I don't know what the situation is there, right? Is that, something you are gonna fund, or you're not?
I'm in support, like I said, of all this stuff on here is necessary. I don't know that the public safety, that falls directly under, the intention. The emergency, the EOC and the generator, I think that certainly does help our citizens in the event of maybe a hill fire that takes out our power and internet for a week around here. That would certainly be something we would need to have for that. So
We discussed that with purpose.
yeah, I'd be curious if there was already money in that. Not used, I don't know if there isn't. And then obviously the vehicles with the ballistic doors, that's a no-brainer there. The evidence refrigerators, I don't have a good enough pitch for the prosecutor's office. Limited duration specialist, I tend to believe that limited duration always ends up being full-time. I don't know enough about I spoke with Dana about about the LexisNexis software, and I spoke with Deputy Mayor Carter about it as well. And there's some value to it. I just don't know if that's a value that our citizens get to take advantage of, I guess.
Well, that would be something that's completely of my daily. And I'm sure Ms. Burke would agree with me as far as the facilitation of being able to prosecute cases with Lexis and Nexus. It ultimately comes down to a public safety issue.
We've been doing it yesterday was our birthday, right? March 1st. We're 57 years old, something like that.
Yeah.
Or 78 years old, so we've done it without it, so.
How well have we done?
Doesn't make it right. This is like partially moving files and boxes. Bring up stuff, defense attorney calls you and says, discovery on this here. 4 hours on that file. Right.
And like I said,
Some of that's that kind of stuff.
the intent of it is probably more than needed, but in the spirit, is it something that our citizens would benefit from for this money? Is it something we should talk about in our budget retreat or for next year's budget? I mean, it's not a whole lot of money, but with this, there's going to come training, there's going to come annual renewals. That 25,000 is just going to get spread out. Oh, hey, we've got a new release. Our expiration's about done. I mean, Jeff can probably tell you we spend over 100,000 a year, I'm sure, just on license renewals, if not more than that. So, it's not just the hard number we see here; it's the soft number that we've got budget for infinity beyond that. So.
Well, and Councilmember Evans, you make a really good point. I mean, you mentioned, I know we were talking to Deputy Mayor Carter about having a council retreat. Do we want to, with the exception of the one item we're moving forward, and list this on as a discussion item at a future retreat this year?
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to see the police thing get done sooner than later, just because that truly is an officer safety issue.
So
shall we put that on next week's?
Yeah,
So I'm hearing that the vehicles, the plastic panels, and
what was the training?
or was it training?
The generator.
Oh, the generator, yeah. Yeah, and I certainly, as we did back in October, I mean, I can just recraft the agenda bill and understand.
What about the prosecutor's office? She needs help there. I mean, yes, the software could be held off for now, but having given them some help, that got needed beforehand.
Maybe it was him, everybody.
And that's one of the things.
Do we not have one or two more people in there than?
We hired a prosecutor.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we don't as far as, what with the low pension staff would be, parent.
And is Sumner kicking in on any of this?
No.
Because that.
No, they have their own they contract out for prosecutor service.
Okay, so no staff of ours. The
I mean, I believe we have an agreement that.
Since we're going through buildings, you have any refrigerators? I really don't know much about that.
Yeah, we're reaching capacity for storage of biological evidence, and now with a recent ruling, we have to, State Patrol doesn't keep our blood anymore after blood draws, because you have to have that even after it's been tested, so the defense can retest it if they want. So we are at capacity now, so this is to help us get a fridge for future.
Right, for that kind of thing.
and even more reason why we need an emergency generator.
Yes.
I guess it sounds like we're working through them, so I hope we get them in order on the vehicles, for yes. Retrofit for ballistic panels was a yes.
Yeah.
Generator.
Yes.
Limited duration legal specialist.
Yes.
And, yeah, Ms. Roberts, simply put it on the,
Yes, put it on,
Yeah.
yes, I'll have this for the agenda next week on motions. Okay, so we have a revised list, just these items on it.
What are we gonna do December 1st, 2024? That is when the limited duration legal specialist.
Right, so it always, much in the same as the emergency management coordinator position that we have on the streets right now would be advertised as a limited duration position with a, funding ending on, November 31st, 2020.
Okay.
Unless there was future action by the council in a future budget cycle to make it a full-time FTE, that position would go away at the end of November.
and by then we would have a year and a half worth of performance data that we present to the council. Discuss whether it's merited to go further.
So yes to the legal specialist.
Yes.
Yes.
LexisNexis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, Mary, you
No, I know, that was.
Law-based file management software.
Yes.
Refrigerators.
Yes.
Watch out what you put in. And then, the bulk of the money is for the pressure projects, so radio read water meters.
Before we go there, I know. We process our transfers.
No.
We do concealed carry though.
Yes.
Are we behind on that? We have a backlog on that one?
We do not. No, we opened up to doing that pretty early on in the pandemic and took precautions. So we are up to speed on it.
And it's only for city residents. If you're outside unincorporated Pierce County, you have to go through South Sound 9.
That's why I'm asking. Good.
Do we want to go through the infrastructure projects, or do we want to hold off until we have more information?
Yeah,
That would be great.
So we'll do the police and the prosecutor ones next week, together with the 35,000. We're not for sure. All right, thank you. I've got my direction.
Okay. All right. I believe that is it. We don't have an executive session scheduled for tonight, so I believe we're at the end. We can adjourn.
And again, how about we take a vote on it? And for anybody who wants to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay.
I didn't bring my
There'll be a motion and a second on that. Mayor, there'll be a motion for a second.
I believe it.
Okay. Just trying to go by the rules.
Oh, absolutely.